She was breathtaking, bold, and completely unforgettable. Ava Gardner wasn't just a Hollywood star, she was a legend. With her striking green eyes and fiery personality, she captured hearts and turned heads everywhere she went. But behind the glamorous red carpets and flashing cameras was a woman who lived by her own rules. From her scandalous high-profile affairs to explosive marriages, Ava Gardner's life was filled with love, heartbreak, and controversy. She lived fast, loved hard, and never looked back. But that's what made her so fascinating. So, what was it really like to be Ava Gardner? Join us as we take a look at her journey from the very beginning, uncovering the love affairs that shook Hollywood, the scandals that kept tabloids buzzing, and the untold stories behind her legendary life. Humble beginnings in the South. Ava Gardner was born on December 24, 1922 in Grabtown, North Carolina. She was the youngest of 7 kids, growing up in a world far removed from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Her father owned land, ran a sawmill, and even had a small store, making the family better than well-to-do by local standards. But life has a way of turning things upside down. When the Great Depression hit, the Gardners lost everything. Their land, their store, gone. Ava's mother had no choice but to take a job as a cook and housekeeper at a teacher's dormitory, which at least provided a roof over their heads. Meanwhile, her father scraped by as a sharecropper, working odd jobs at sawmills to make ends meet. By 1931, things got worse. The school where Ava's mother worked shut down, forcing the family to move to Newport News, Virginia. There, her mother found work running a boarding house for shipyard workers, but Ava's father's health declined rapidly. In 1938, when Ava was just 15, he died of bronchitis. It was a crushing blow. After his death, the family moved again, this time to Rock Ridge, North Carolina, where Ava's mother opened another boarding house for teachers. It wasn't easy. The family struggled, and Ava had to wear hand-me-down clothes, which made her an easy target for school bullies. But despite the hardships, she kept going. She finished high school in 1939 and took secretarial classes at Atlantic Christian College, hoping for a stable career. Little did she know, fate had something completely different in store for her, an accidental discovery in New York. In the summer of 1940, Ava visited her sister in New York City. Her brother-in-law, who was a professional photographer, suggested taking a portrait of her as a gift for her mother. When he saw the final picture, he was so impressed that he displayed it in the window of his Fifth Avenue studio. And that's when fate stepped in. A legal clerk named Barnard Duhan, who worked for Lowe's Theaters, walked past the studio and stopped in his tracks. He had a habit of pretending to be a talent scout for MGM just to get phone numbers from pretty girls. This time, he tried his trick again, asking for Ava's number. But the receptionist wasn't having it and turned him away. Still, his comment stuck. Someone should send her info to MGM. Her brother-in-law took the suggestion seriously and immediately sent her photo to MGM's New York office. Within days, she was invited for an interview. The 18-year-old Ava, still a student at Atlantic Christian College, found herself standing in front of MGM's head talent scout, Al Altman. But there was a problem. Ava's thick Southern accent made her difficult to understand. Instead of recording her voice, Altman had her do a silent screen test. She walked toward the camera, turned, and rearranged some flowers. That was it. No dialogue, no singing, just movement. But sometimes that's all it takes. When the footage reached Hollywood, MGM's head, Louis B. Mayer, reportedly said, "She can't sing, she can't act, she can't talk, she's terrific." With that, Ava was handed a 7-year contract with MGM at $50 a week. Just like that, her life changed overnight. Hollywood's new obsession. Getting a contract didn't mean instant stardom. MGM signed hundreds of beautiful women every year, but most of them were just background faces, hoping for a shot at fame. Some made it, some faded into obscurity, and some, well, let's just say they were kept around for the entertainment of the studio's higher-ups. Ava was somewhere in between. Her first challenge was to get rid of her Southern drawl. MGM found her accent too thick for audiences to understand, so they hired a speech coach to fix it. It wasn't just about the way she spoke. Hollywood studios controlled everything. They changed how their stars dressed, walked, and even smiled. While Ava struggled with voice lessons, MGM put her to work in low-budget B movies. Most of the time, she had no lines. She was just there to look stunning, which, to be fair, she did effortlessly. When she wasn't on set, the studio kept her busy with endless publicity shoots. She became one of Hollywood's most photographed women, even before becoming a household name. MGM plastered her face on film posters, sometimes for movies she wasn't even in. She also posed for countless leg art shots, the industry term for pin-up photos meant to keep audiences dreaming about Hollywood's most beautiful women. Ava knew she was being used for her looks, but she played along. She had come from nothing, and this was her shot at a better life. Besides, MGM had already decided she was going to be a star, but what they didn't know was that Ava Gardner wasn't the kind of woman who played by the rules. Her beauty made her famous, but her rebellious nature made her unforgettable. And soon, Hollywood would learn that controlling Ava Gardner was not going to be easy. From extra to leading lady. Her first on-screen appearance was a small walk-on role in We Were Dancing, 1942, a film starring Norma Shearer. But nobody noticed her. She continued getting bit parts, appearing in over 15 films without credit. Then came Ghosts on the Loose, 1943, where Ava finally saw her name on a movie poster. It wasn't a breakthrough, but it was a step forward. MGM still didn't know what to do with her, though. They had plenty of beautiful women under contract, and Ava was just one of many waiting for her big break. That break came in 1946 when she starred in The Killers. This was Ava's moment. She played the ultimate femme fatale, Kitty Collins, seductive, dangerous, and impossible to resist. The film was a hit, and Ava finally got the attention she deserved. Despite her rising success, Ava wasn't as confident as she seemed on screen. Actress Arlene Dahl once revealed, Ava wouldn't even go eat in the commissary because she was so scared to walk in and see Lana Turner and Greer Garson. Even as a rising star, she felt out of place among Hollywood's elite. But she wouldn't be in their shadow for long. After The Killers, Ava's career took off. She starred in one hit after another: The Hucksters, 1947, One Touch of Venus, 1948, and Showboat, 1951. Each role cemented her status as one of Hollywood's most glamorous actresses. By 1952, she had become a full-fledged star. That year, she appeared in The Snows of Kilimanjaro and Lone Star, proving she wasn't just a pretty face, but it was Mogambo, 1953, that took her career to new heights. She starred alongside Clark Gable and Grace Kelly, and her performance earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. Ava was known for her beauty, but she had a sharp wit too. She once described her Mogambo director, John Ford, as the meanest man on earth, thoroughly evil, adored him. That was Ava. Bold, unfiltered, and never afraid to speak her mind. In The Barefoot Contessa, 1954, Ava played Maria Vargas, a Spanish dancer who rises to Hollywood fame only to face a tragic downfall. The character felt personal to her. Ava herself was a fiercely independent woman who never quite fit the mold Hollywood tried to put her in. She even had a lifelong habit of walking around barefoot, which influenced her decision to take the role. Through the 1950s, Ava continued to play strong, sophisticated women: duchesses, baronesses, and even Queen Guinevere in Knights of the Round Table, 1953. She had become one of the most recognizable actresses in the world, but Hollywood wasn't done pushing her to new heights. The final years of stardom. By the 1960s, Ava was still a major star, but she started taking more selective roles. She played Soledad in The Angel Wore Red, 1960, followed by 55 Days at Peking, 1963, where she starred alongside Charlton Heston and David Niven. One of her most memorable roles came in The Night of the Iguana, 1964. The film, based on a Tennessee Williams play, starred Richard Burton and Deborah Kerr. Ava played Maxine Falk, a strong-willed woman running a beachside hotel. She received a Golden Globe nomination for the role, proving she still had the magic that made her famous. During this time, she also reunited with her Killers co-star Burt Lancaster in 7 Days in May, 1964, a political thriller about an attempted military coup. Her character, a former love interest of Lancaster's, played a crucial role in preventing the takeover. In 1966, Ava took on a very different role, playing Sarah, the wife of Abraham, in the Bible, in the beginning. Director John Huston had personally chosen her for the part, and Ava later admitted, "He had more faith in me than I did myself." That same year, Ava moved to Tokyo, where she underwent a hysterectomy, fearing the uterine cancer that had taken her mother's life. 2 years later, she returned to film in Meyerling, 1968, playing Empress Elizabeth of Austria. As Hollywood changed in the 1970s and 80s, Ava worked less frequently. She made her last film appearance in Maggie, 1986, and later published her autobiography, Ava, My Story, in 1990. Even in her final years, Ava remained unapologetically herself, bold, fearless, and unforgettable. Speaking of which, Ava Gardner's love life was as scandalous as the Hollywood movies she starred in. Passion, heartbreak, and controversy followed her everywhere, making her one of the most talked-about stars of her time. A Hollywood fairy tale with Mickey Rooney, or so it seemed. Ava Gardner arrived in Hollywood in 1941 as a young, wide-eyed girl from North Carolina. She was just starting her career when she met Mickey Rooney, one of the biggest stars at the time. Unlike Ava, who was new to the industry, Mickey had been famous since he was a child. He starred in the popular Andy Hardy films and had already been nominated for an Oscar. Their first meeting was anything but ordinary. Mickey was dressed as Carmen Miranda, wearing a flamboyant costume and makeup for his movie Babes on Broadway, 1941. But even in that outfit, he charmed Ava. At first, she played hard to get, but Mickey was persistent. Eventually, she agreed to go on a date with him, and things moved quickly. Their romance didn't sit well with MGM. The studio controlled every part of its stars' lives, and Mickey was their golden boy. His wholesome image in the Andy Hardy movies was a huge part of his success, and the studio feared that news of a marriage would ruin it. Metro owned both of us and did not look kindly on any change in Andy Hardy's status, Ava later wrote in her autobiography. But love, or at least young passion, won. MGM finally gave them permission to marry, but only under strict conditions. There would be no grand Hollywood wedding. Instead, they had a quiet ceremony in a small white church in Ballard, California, on January 10, 1942. Ava wore a simple blue suit instead of the white wedding gown she had always dreamed of. "I didn't mind missing out on the big wedding, but I did miss the dress," she admitted later. Speaking of which, the wedding wasn't exactly emotional. Ava later recalled, Mickey fumbled with the wedding ring, inscribed "Love Forever," which was probably some kind of portent, given that he racked up 8 marriages altogether, and I managed another 2. No one shed any tears. But for a brief moment, the two were happy. Right after the wedding, Ava and Mickey went on their honeymoon at the luxurious Del Monte Hotel near Carmel, California. But it wasn't long before their private life turned into a publicity stunt. MGM wasted no time in promoting the marriage. A publicity photo of the newlyweds was released with the caption, "Mickey Rooney and his bride, actress Ava Gardner, pose for cameramen after their wedding in the Santa Ynez Valley Presbyterian Church." More photos followed. Some even showed them golfing together, creating an image of the perfect Hollywood couple. Their honeymoon was interrupted by a war bond tour. World War II was raging, and Mickey, as a major star, was asked to travel across the country to promote war bonds. Ava went along, but she quickly realized that this wasn't going to be the romantic getaway she had imagined. Everywhere they went, Boston, New York, Washington, and even Fort Bragg, Mickey was the center of attention. Ava, still new to Hollywood, was barely noticed. One special stop on their tour was North Carolina, where Ava introduced Mickey to her family. Her mother, who was battling illness, dressed up and hosted a big gathering to meet her famous son-in-law. Mickey, always the performer, put on a show for her, singing, dancing, and making everyone laugh. Ava later wrote, "Mama had made herself pretty. She'd got herself dressed to the nines to meet her famous son-in-law." And Mickey liked that sort of situation too. He entertained Mama, he hugged her, he made her laugh, he brought tears to her eyes. He did his impersonations, he did his songs and dances. It was a wonderful, wonderful occasion for Mama, who we all knew was slowly dying. It was one of the happiest memories Ava had of Mickey, a marriage destined to fail. Behind closed doors, things weren't so perfect. Ava was just 19 and Mickey was 21. Neither of them knew what marriage really meant. "We were babies, just children, and our lives were run by a lot of other people. We hadn't had a chance," Ava later said. Mickey had a wild side. He loved to party, gamble, and flirt with other women. Ava, on the other hand, wanted stability. She had grown up in a strict Baptist household and wasn't used to Mickey's fast-paced lifestyle. Rumors of Mickey's affairs quickly reached Ava. She tried to ignore them, but deep down, she knew the marriage was falling apart. Mickey was constantly working, traveling, or out late at night. Meanwhile, Ava was left alone, trying to find her place in Hollywood. By the time they had been married for just a few months, it was clear that things weren't going to last. The final blow came when Ava learned about Mickey's affairs firsthand. She had been warned by many, but she didn't want to believe it, until she saw it with her own eyes. That's when she packed her bags and left. The divorce was finalized on May 21, 1943, just a little over a year after they got married. That same day, Ava's mother passed away. It was one of the most difficult days of her life. Despite the heartbreak, Ava never held a grudge against Mickey. Even after their divorce, they remained friends. In later years, Ava admitted that she had truly loved him when they got married and still cared about him long after they split. Her biographer, Doris Cannon, wrote, "Many years later, Ava would say that she loved Mickey when she married him, and she loved him even when she ended their brief union. But she never loved him more than on that day in Raleigh when he made her mother so happy." Mickey, too, never stopped admiring Ava. In an interview for the Ava Gardner Museum, he reminisced, "My heart was gone when I saw her." He called being married to her one of the most memorable moments of my life. In 2001, decades after their marriage ended, Mickey Rooney visited the Ava Gardner Museum. He walked through the exhibits, looking at old photos and memorabilia from their time together. He even contributed interviews to a film about Ava's life, sharing his memories of their whirlwind romance. Mickey had been married many times after Ava, but he never spoke ill of her. When asked about their time together, he simply said, "I wish her well wherever she is." Their love story may have been short, but it left a lasting impression on both of them. But Mickey Rooney wasn't the only man who would leave a mark on Ava Gardner's life. Not long after their divorce, she found herself caught up in another whirlwind romance, this time with band leader Artie Shaw. A romance with Artie Shaw that left scars. Shaw was charming, talented, and had a way of making women fall for him instantly, but he also had a reputation for being controlling. He had already been married 4 times before he met Ava, and yet she couldn't resist him. In October 1945, they tied the knot. At first, Ava was thrilled. She believed she had finally found a man who would love and understand her, but the reality was much different. Shaw wasn't just demanding. He made Ava feel like she wasn't good enough. He would criticize her intelligence, making her feel small and insecure. Ava, who had never doubted herself before, suddenly felt like she wasn't smart enough to be his wife. It got so bad that she even took an IQ test just to prove to herself that she wasn't stupid. But no test score could fix what was broken in their marriage. To cope, Ava picked up unhealthy habits. She started smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day and drank heavily just to deal with the pressure. Shaw's constant belittling took its toll, and the love she had for him slowly turned into pain. Then, just 1 week after their first anniversary, he walked out. Ava later told her ghostwriter, "We married in 45, October 17th. He dumped me 1 week after our first anniversary. The bastard broke my heart." And just like that, he left her for another woman, leaving Ava to pick up the pieces. Again. Heartbroken and alone once more, Ava wasn't sure if she would ever find lasting love. But she certainly did. A short-lived romance with Fred McMurray. You see, Ava Gardner had her fair share of love affairs, but some ended as quickly as they began. In 1946, fresh out of her disastrous marriage to Artie Shaw, she found herself drawn to her Singapore co-star, Fred McMurray. McMurray had the kind of rugged, masculine look Ava loved. Their chemistry was undeniable, and soon they fell into a passionate, secret romance. Ava, still healing from the emotional abuse she suffered with Shaw, found comfort in Fred's arms. But there was something she didn't know. McMurray was married, and his wife, Lillian Lamont, was seriously ill. The moment Ava found out, everything changed. She wasn't the type to care about traditional morality. Hollywood was full of secret affairs, and she wasn't naive. But cheating on a sick wife? That was too much for her. Her longtime assistant and friend, Maureen Jordan, later revealed she didn't object to secret adultery, but when a guy was two-timing a sick wife, she objected to that, strongly. Ava ended things immediately. While this wasn't the first or last time Ava would find herself caught in the middle of a complicated love affair, But while she had no problem breaking hearts, she did have limits, and McMurray had crossed them. A string of lovers and a search for something real. After McMurray, Ava moved on quickly. She had affairs, but most of them were short-lived. She enjoyed her flings, but was still searching for something real, something that would last. One of her next lovers was Robert Taylor, a suave leading man who was trapped in an unhappy marriage to Barbara Stanwyck. Their affair, filled with secrecy and guilt, didn't last long. Ava later called it a magical little interlude, but she knew it couldn't go on. Stanwyck was one of Hollywood's biggest stars, and if the affair got out, the backlash would be brutal. Then came Howard Duff, another brief but intense romance. But once again, it didn't lead to anything serious. Duff eventually married actress Ida Lupino, leaving Ava to move on yet again. Through it all, Ava had developed a new habit: martinis. After enduring Artie Shaw's constant belittling, she started drinking regularly. At first, it was just a way to ease her nerves, especially when surrounded by intellectuals who made her feel out of place. But soon, martinis became her daily companions. She spent her nights with close friends like Lana Turner, sipping drinks and trying to forget about her failed relationships. But Hollywood was small, and the rumors about Ava's love life never stopped. And then came Frank Sinatra, a man who wasn't just another lover. He was the one who would change her life forever. Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra, passion, scandal, and a love that never faded. Ava Gardner had already been through 2 failed marriages by the time Frank Sinatra came into her life. But this wasn't just another romance. This was the love story that defined Hollywood in the 1940s and 1950s. Their first real night together was unforgettable. It was 1949, and both were drunk at a party in Palm Springs. Sinatra, still married to Nancy Sinatra, convinced Ava to leave with him. They sped through the night, ending up in the quiet town of Indio. What happened next was pure chaos. Sinatra pulled out 2 guns and started shooting at streetlights. Instead of being shocked, Ava joined in, firing at a hardware store window. Eventually, the police showed up. But this was Hollywood. Money and connections could make anything disappear. The studio paid off the cops, and Ava went home like nothing had happened. When she walked through the door, her sister Bappy was eating breakfast. Ava simply said, "I was out with Frank Sinatra and we had a wonderful time." That night set the tone for their entire relationship: wild, passionate, and full of trouble. Frank Sinatra had been married to Nancy since 1939, and they had 3 children together. But when he met Ava on the MGM lot in the late 1940s, everything changed. He couldn't take his eyes off her. And, despite warnings from studio head Louis B. Mayer, he pursued her anyway. By 1948, they were secretly spending time together. The public didn't know, but Hollywood insiders did. Sinatra wasn't exactly hiding the affair. Ava didn't care what people thought. She wanted him, and she was determined to have him. Mayer warned Ava to stay away from him, but that only made things worse. The more people tried to stop them, the closer they got. Ava even pressured Sinatra to ask Nancy for a divorce. Nancy refused at first, but in 1951 she finally gave in. Just 72 hours after Sinatra's divorce was finalized, he and Ava got married. It should have been a happy ending, but instead it was just the beginning of a storm. Their marriage was a disaster almost from the start. The public was furious. Frank's records were burned in the streets. The Catholic Church even condemned their relationship. Fans who once adored him turned against him. For Ava, the scandal didn't hurt her career. If anything, it made her even more famous. She already had a reputation as a femme fatale on screen, and now she had one in real life too. Her films, including Mogambo, became more successful than ever. But for Sinatra, things were different. His career hit rock bottom. His records weren't selling, and he was losing work. He went from being one of the biggest stars in the world to struggling for roles, and that pressure only made things worse between them. Their love was intense, but so were their fights. Both had fiery tempers. Both were jealous. They argued constantly, sometimes in public, sometimes behind closed doors. Sinatra's career struggles made him insecure, and Ava wasn't the type to sit back and play the quiet wife. They were either madly in love or at each other's throats. There was no in-between. Despite their problems, Ava formed a bond with Sinatra's children. His daughter Tina, just a little girl at the time, adored her. Ava treated her with warmth, making sure to get down to her level when they spoke. Even years later, Tina still remembered how kind Ava had been to her, but kindness wasn't enough to save the marriage. Ava and Sinatra's marriage only lasted 2 years. By 1953, MGM announced their separation. They officially divorced in 1957. Ava later revealed that during their marriage, she had 2 abortions. The first happened in Nigeria while filming Mogambo. She believed that bringing a child into their unstable relationship wouldn't be fair. She once said she didn't think she had a future with Frank. She didn't think they had a stable enough environment to have a family. Sinatra was heartbroken when he found out, and years later, Ava regretted it too. It was one of the great tragedies of their love story. Even after their divorce, they never fully let go of each other. There were rumors of a possible reconciliation, but it never happened. Instead, Ava moved to London, escaping the Hollywood spotlight. She never remarried. When Ava died in 1990, Sinatra was devastated. His daughter Tina said it was a huge blow to him, something he never fully recovered from. He locked himself in a room for 24 hours, refusing to speak to anyone. He kept a medallion Ava had given him, a St. Francis charm. On one side was St. Francis, and on the other was a tiny picture of Ava. He wore it for the rest of his life. Sinatra passed away in 1998, but one thing was clear: Ava Gardner had been the love of his life. After her relationship with Frank Sinatra came a bullfighter's love that didn't last. Ava Gardner had a habit of falling for intense, larger-than-life men. She was drawn to passion, danger, and excitement. So when she met Spanish bullfighter Luis Miguel Dominguin in 1954, it wasn't surprising that sparks flew instantly. At the time, Ava was still technically married to Frank Sinatra. Their relationship had already crumbled, but the divorce wasn't finalized yet. That didn't stop her from diving headfirst into this new romance. Dominguin was already famous in Spain. He was fearless in the bull ring and equally bold in his personal life. He had been engaged to the Duke of Pino Hermoso's daughter, an 18-year-old aristocrat. But when he met Ava, everything changed. To him, she was perfection. He once called her the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Their affair was passionate and intense. Ava loved Spain, and she loved the thrill of dating one of the country's most admired men. She followed him to bullfights, soaking in the culture and the admiration he received from crowds. The relationship seemed like something out of a movie, 2 glamorous, fearless people wrapped up in a whirlwind romance. But passion wasn't enough to keep them together. Dominguin was used to getting what he wanted, and Ava wasn't the type to be controlled. Their love burned fast and bright, but it wasn't built to last. By 1955, it was over. He moved on quickly, marrying Italian actress Lucia Bose. Ava, however, didn't have time to dwell on heartbreak. There was always another adventure waiting for her. A dangerous love affair with George C. Scott. Not every romance in Ava's life was filled with excitement and passion. Some were darker, more painful. That was the case with actor George C. Scott. The two met in 1964 on the set of The Bible, In the Beginning. Scott was a talented actor, but he had a dangerous temper. At first, Ava was drawn to his intensity. He was passionate, confident, and completely captivated by her. But things quickly turned toxic. In her autobiography, Ava revealed that Scott was abusive. Their relationship was full of fights, and his jealousy often turned violent. While she never shared all the details, she made it clear that this wasn't just a troubled romance. It was something far worse. A spokesperson later said that Scott had no comment on Ava's claims. Whether he ever admitted to the abuse or not, Ava's words painted a clear picture. This was one of the darkest chapters of her love life, one that she was happy to leave behind. Unlike some of her past lovers, Scott didn't leave a lasting impression on her. There were no fond memories, no stories of rekindled friendships. When it ended, Ava walked away and never looked back. And so not all of Ava's relationships were romantic. Some were built on deep friendships, ones that blurred the lines between love and admiration. That was the case with Ernest Hemingway. A complicated bond with Ernest Hemingway. The legendary writer and the Hollywood icon met in 1954. Ava was still seeing Luis Miguel Dominguin, and she was still legally married to Sinatra. At the time, she was facing intense public scrutiny. The press followed her every move and she was exhausted. Hemingway offered her an escape. His home in Havana, Cuba was like a secret world, a place where she could hide away from Hollywood, the paparazzi, and the endless gossip. There, surrounded by nature and animals, she found peace. Her assistant, Maureen Jordan, later described Hemingway's home in her autobiography, Living with Miss G. She wrote, "There were 15 acres of wilderness. Still, there was room for a swimming pool, vegetable garden, vines, and more species of mango than anywhere else in Cuba. There were about 5 million cats as far as I could see, along with dogs and chickens and cows that gave the place a friendly atmosphere." Ava and Hemingway spent hours drinking, talking, and enjoying each other's company. He was a man of strong opinions, and so was she. They argued, laughed, and bonded over their shared love of adventure. Whether they were ever romantically involved remains a mystery. Ava never confirmed it, and Hemingway never spoke about it. But their connection was undeniable. He gave her a place to breathe, a place where she wasn't just Ava Gardner, the movie star. She was just Ava. Even after she left Havana, their friendship remained. Hemingway admired her strength, and Ava admired his mind. It was a bond that lasted, even when they were worlds apart. A drunken night with Fidel Castro. Did you know that Ava wasn't just drawn to Hollywood's most famous men? She was also fascinated by power, politics, and rebellion. She had strong opinions and wasn't afraid to speak her mind. Her ex-husband Mickey Rooney once called her a Red, accusing her of communist sympathies. The truth was that Ava was a liberal Democrat, and she wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo. In 1959, during a trip to Cuba, she found herself face-to-face with one of the most controversial figures of the time, Fidel Castro. At that point, Castro was still considered a revolutionary hero. Many Americans saw him as a liberator, a leader fighting for change. Ava was curious. Their meeting took place at the Havana Hilton. Castro greeted her with his signature charm, treating her like royalty. He took her on a tour of his headquarters, a former VIP suite that now served as his office. From the balcony, they looked over the entire city. With drinks in hand, they talked late into the night. Castro spoke about his dreams for Cuba, his vision for the future. Ava listened, intrigued, but not everyone was happy about their connection. Castro's mistress, Marita Lorenz, saw Ava as a threat. According to Lorenz, Ava tried to get close to Castro, in fact, too close. One night, a drunk Ava confronted her, calling her a little bitch and accusing her of hiding Castro. The argument turned physical. Ava followed Lorenz into an elevator and slapped her across the face. That was when tensions escalated. A bodyguard pulled a gun. The situation was spiraling out of control. Realizing things were getting dangerous, Castro stepped in. He decided it was time for Ava to leave, but he wasn't about to send her away empty-handed. According to Lorenz, Castro fixed up Ava Gardner with an aide, who was to satisfy her in a suite at the National Hotel, compliments of Cuba. Ava's time with Castro ended as dramatically as it began, but the story only added to her legend. She wasn't just a movie star. She was a woman who lived without fear, who refused to play by the rules. Her love life was filled with passion, scandal, and heartbreak. But one thing was certain: Ava Gardner never did anything halfway. Ava Gardner's final days: confessions, heartbreak, and a life of scandal. By the late 1980s, Ava Gardner was no longer the glamorous star who had once ruled Hollywood. She was broke, alone, and often drunk. Years of smoking, drinking, and wild living had taken a toll on her health. After suffering a stroke in 1986, she struggled with daily life. But she still had one thing left: her story. In January 1988, Ava made a tough decision. She needed money, and she had two choices. I either write the book or sell the jewels, and I'm kinda sentimental about the jewels. So she reached out to British journalist Peter Evans and asked him to ghostwrite her memoirs. What followed were raw, unfiltered confessions. Ava held nothing back. She spoke about love, betrayal, and the dark side of Hollywood. These conversations, later compiled into the book Ava Gardner, The Secret Conversations, revealed shocking truths about her life. She had always been known for her beauty, but that didn't stop men from treating her badly. Her first husband, Mickey Rooney, was a notorious womanizer. Even while she was recovering in the hospital from an appendectomy, he was cheating on her, in their own bed. He went through the ladies like a hot knife through fudge, she said. Even her best friend Lana Turner, who had slept with Rooney before Ava, called him Andy hard-on. But Rooney wasn't the only man who let her down. Ava's second husband, bandleader Artie was no better. He was controlling and constantly put her down. Another kind of bully, he was always putting me down, she admitted. He made her feel so insecure that she started smoking 3 packs of Winstons a day and drinking even more. She even took an IQ test just to prove to herself that she wasn't stupid. He had me convinced that I was completely stupid, she said. I didn't have an enormous IQ, but I did have a high one. But none of her relationships were as famous or as destructive as her marriage to Frank Sinatra. Throughout her life, she picked the wrong men. Men who hurt her, controlled her, or left her heartbroken. One of her most painful relationships was with actor George C. Scott. Scott was an incredible actor, but he was also violent. Ava later admitted that he beat the ST out of me. She stayed in the relationship longer than she should have. But like so many of her romances, it ended in heartbreak. The final years of a fallen star. By the late 1980s, Ava was a shadow of the woman she once was. She had spent her entire life searching for happiness in men, alcohol, and fame, but in the end, she was alone. Her health was failing, and while she could afford medical care, Sinatra still stepped in to help. He insisted on arranging for a medically staffed private plane to bring her to a specialist in the U.S. Ava, too proud to ask for help, allowed him to do it. It was one of the last gestures of love between them. On January 25, 1990, at the age of 67, Ava Gardner died from pneumonia in her London home. She had once been one of the most glamorous and sought-after women in Hollywood, but she passed away quietly, far from the spotlight. She was buried 4 days later in Sunset Memorial Park in Smithfield, North Carolina, back home, next to her parents and siblings. Despite all the pain, all the heartbreak, and all the scandal, Ava Gardner remained unforgettable. She was beautiful, fearless, and even in her final days, unfiltered. Her confessions, filled with stories of booze, sex, and stardom, proved one thing. She had lived life on her own terms. Do you think Ava Gardner's turbulent love life was a result of Hollywood pressures, or was she just someone who refused to settle for anything less than passion? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that uncover the secrets of history's most captivating figures. Thanks for watching.